Should bugs have points? Well, that depends on how you use story points and how you define bugs. Let's get into it. A few weeks ago, I posted a prompt online. I said, do you have any questions about Scrum? Post in the comments below, and I'll respond in a new thread. I got a question from Brian. He asked, should bugs have points? First, how do you use points or story points? I'll make a presumption that you're using points as they were intended, though I can't be sure. People use story points in all kinds of bizarre ways. But here's how they were intended, in a nutshell. Story points are numbers. They're associated with product backlog items. The numbers represent the size of effort required to produce each product backlog item. The numbers are relative to each other. These numbers have no relation to time. Most teachers of this concept advise that you avoid matching these numbers to hours or days. Rather, use them to compare the relative size of things. A 4 or 5 is roughly twice the effort of a 2. A 100 is larger than a 20 by a factor of 5 or so. This is fuzzy math deliberately. Then, as a team turns product backlog items into functionality, they might look with hindsight and say, we got 47 points of the backlog done last week. And they might even compare that portion of work to the current product backlog. Those 47 points of effort appear to be 1/10 of the total current product backlog, and so we're 1/10 of the way through our current product backlog. And they might even use that information to forecast the next period of work. We got done 47 points last week. Let's select 47 points for next week, and so on. Now, this way of using story points leads people to think that they can calculate a team's velocity. Some people use these numbers to describe the rate at which a team displaces product backlog items, the rate a team's position changes in the product backlog. There are a bunch of problems with this, of course. First, many people confuse velocity with speed. A hamster in a wheel may be running at high speed, but its velocity is 0. It's important to know the difference. Second, because teams can game the system. To make it appear that they're going faster, they can simply increase the numbers. But again, how is anyone to know that they're actually traveling and not just spinning the hamster wheel faster? And third, all of this presumes that you're not just playing a game of number wang. So let's presume that story points are being used as intended. The numbers are used to describe the rate at which a team displaces product backlog, or the rate at which a team's position changes in the product backlog. So now let's talk about whether bugs should have points. I don't like how broadly the term bug is used. Too often it's used to mean like any kind of quality problem. And so let's be precise. How about this one? We discovered that a defect escaped into the hands of end users. We didn't notice it at the time, but now it's out there in the production environment, and we've just learned of it. What to do? Should a team estimate it and give it points? No. Or give it negative points. Either way, it's important to the team and their stakeholders to realize that there's a cost of this error. Every escape defect, every defect, and that is an error in implementation that does not meet the quality standard or specification. It was supposed to do X, we coded it and thought that it achieved X when we released it, but now we understand that we missed something, we missed a test, or our implementation sometimes fails to produce X. That's a defect. Every escaped defect is a signal of a mistake in judgment or process or both. The team thought that they had displaced a portion of the product backlog, but in fact didn't, or not to the extent that they previously thought. They're going to have to spin in that hamster wheel for a while without making forward progress through the backlog. But if they grant this item some points, then they'll create the illusion that they are displacing even more of the product backlog, when in fact they're having to revisit stuff that they already said was done. How about this one? We discovered a defect before we let it escape into the hands of users. In other words, the item is still in progress and we haven't released it yet. And we discover that it's not working properly. Maybe the design is flawed, or we misunderstood the requirement, or we missed a few tests and we realize it's more complex than we estimated. What should the team do about this? Well, first, don't make a new product backlog item. Understand that there's an existing product backlog item that hasn't yet been released, and it's simply not yet done. Now, how do I know that? Because the team is only working on stuff that's in the product backlog, right? So if they've worked on it and they are working on it, it's in the backlog somewhere. So acknowledge that it's not yet done and then get it done. Whether the team increases the story points on this item is unimportant. It's a valid argument to say the number of story points we estimated already includes all of this work that we're now having to do. We thought we'd be swimming downstream and it's easy, but it turns out we have to swim upstream. Either way, as the crow flies, the distance does not change. But it's also a valid argument to say we underestimated this work. We thought the destination was Toronto, but we now understand the destination is Toronto Island. Use whichever metaphor is most apt. But don't debate it too much either. I mean, don't let inspection of the work get in the way of the work. Third, how about this one? Technical debt. Technical debt. We released some functionality that we knew to be improper, and we did this deliberately and for specific benefit, and now we have to rework it to improve its quality. In other words, it's a debt that needs to be repaid. We took out a loan to buy a truck. The specific benefit is that we can now make deliveries with our truck, and that's valuable to our business. And with the money we earn with the truck, we can repay the loan with interest. Let's say the team has a product backlog item that's worth 10 points. Some would argue that they delivered some of those points and now they have to deliver the rest. They previously delivered 8 out of 10 points and now they have to finish the other 2. But that's not how I look at it. They released an item estimated at 10 points with a quality of 8. They borrowed the other 2 and now they have to repay that 2 with interest. Now, first of all of this is just number weighing, but as a team previously worked to displace a portion of their product backlog, they did it artificially fast, and now they have to go slow to repay that loan. The effort to repay that loan will prevent them from displacing more of their product backlog. And last, how about an actual bug? Like, the word bug is most applicable when a problem occurs not at the hands of human error. For example, artificial intelligence often produces undesirable, unpredictable results. Of course, those misbehaviors are part of the training process, but they may be as mysterious and uncontrollable as bugs. Or imagine the experience using an app on a mobile phone with intermittent internet connection. Latency is unpredictable. Synchronous processes may never complete. Data transmission isn't reliable. And so the result is that the users may describe that app as buggy. Now, these complications aren't the result of human error exactly. Rather, the software is being used in conditions so unreliable that all contemporary engineering practices fail in unpredictable ways. Or imagine the calculation of large numbers like prime numbers or pi. The calculation requires hardware that pushes the limits of industrial design. The problem isn't how do we calculate large numbers and verify their primacy. The math isn't a mystery. The challenge is how do we build a computer with plastics and precious metals that won't melt before our math formula completes? Heat dissipation, electrical current, the melting points of various plastics and metals, these factors are complex and can cause software to behave buggy. Now, with this use of the word bug, note those aren't items that we would normally have in the product backlog. They aren't features or requirements exactly. These examples describe stuff that's going wrong with existing features under existing conditions. And so the question whether to give them points is rather simple. Must we solve this bug? And if no, ignore it and never look back. But please be sure that your airplanes aren't going to start nosediving into the earth, or that your Bitcoin ATMs aren't going to leak decrypted keys. If yes, we must solve this bug, then ask yourself, while working on this bug, are we able to displace any portion of our existing product backlog? The answer is probably no, so don't give this any points. Now, this can get tricky, and I think it's unlikely that stakeholders will care much about all this nuance. I mean, at some level, it's probably just best to not use points at all. Honestly, most teams that I meet, they use story points to describe how fast that hamster wheel goes. The team is working really hard. And maybe there's value in that, but it doesn't indicate progress through the product backlog as the practice of story points intended. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for watching.